Chat. Chatty. Priorities.
Buenas and good morning. I'd like to thank all our panelists for joining us this morning and making this event happen. And to our guest here today, on behalf of our Executive Director, Kimberly Keeling, welcome. And also I'd like to give a big shout out to the Agana Shopping Center, who has graciously hosted the exhibit, allowed us to host the exhibit here at the Agana Shopping Center. Enjoy, and I'd like to hand it back over to Muñeca, but before I do that, way back at the entrance, we're at the back, is Nadine, our other partner in crime, so here we go.
That was Cara Flores, by the way. Everybody knows her. And everybody knows this great panel that we have also. I don't really need to introduce them. They all know each other, but I'm going to just say a quick introduction about everybody here on the panel. First, at that end of the table, we have Dr. Michael Lujan Bevacqua. Miguel is an assistant professor at the University of Guam. He's the founder and former chair of the Chamorro Studies program. He's co-directed several short films, including one about the Magic the Gathering in Chamorro, which was featured at the Guam International Film Festival. He's also served as the Humanities Scholars on numerous films, and he was a co-producer for War for Guam. Thanks for being here, Miguel. And then we have, of course, the Muña brothers, Don and Kel Muña. They are the founders of the Guam International Film Festival. Don is the executive director, and Kel is the program director for GIFF. Their film, Shiro's Head, a dramatic film, included animation, live action, Chamorro subtitles. I think a lot of us are really excited to see a feature film with Chamorro subtitles, and Chamorro's with English subtitles, I should say. So that film won several awards, and their documentary, Talent Town, also premiered just last year on Guam. And then we have Cara Flores Mays. Cara, thank you so much for sending me your bio, for being the panelist to send me your bio. Cara is a member of the Guam Advisory Board for Films for Youth, Incorporated Guam, an organization that seeks to empower youth through filmmaking workshops. She helped with the film Duendes Gone Bad, an FYI film written and produced by the youth at the Department of Youth Affairs Corrections Facility, and it's going to screen at this year's GIFF. She also co-produced and directed a We Are Guåhan short film, We Are Pawget, documenting the efforts to save the sacred Pawget village site from the potentially destructive impact of the military training. We Are Pawget premiered at the Guam International Film Festival in 2012 and was aired on KOM and the local PBS channel. And of course, everybody knows her for Nihi, a cultural children's program, which aired its first season in 2014 on KOM and local ABC and Fox affiliates. She's also the co-founder and co-designer of a menswear line, Lago Sangani, and we have it being modeled today by Don Muña. So that's so awesome. We're all really excited about that. And of course, we have the other woman on the panel. We're so grateful to have Bernadette Provido Schumann. She's actually the founder for the Films for Youth Incarcerated, one of the co-founders with Alex Munoz and Bal Uggan. She's co-produced and co-directed numerous films that really push prevention, education, and awareness for youth, STD and HIV prevention and awareness for youth, and we're just really excited that she's here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Bernie. And of course, last but not least, we have Clynt Ridgell and Raphael Unpingco, the Puri team. Clynt, as a lot of you know, they're both Puris, yes. Clynt was at KVM for 5 years, and then he went to Pacific News Center for 7 years. Now he works at the court as the Director for Policy Planning and Community Relations. It's a very long title, it's a very important role. And Raphael Unpingco is a fine artist and a teacher. He's teaching right now at Mount Carmel, teaching art to all the grades there. And together, the two of them have done 4 short films on cooking. They directed and produced a documentary, Iman Mofonya the Laddie, as well as 2 docudramas, Sanglo and The Assassination of Guerrero. In addition, Raf has also helped with Guam and Ocean Guam and Ocean Oasis on the Archaeology Channel, so very fancy. So we've got an amazing group here today, and we really want to thank the Guam International Film Festival, Don and Kel, for partnering with Humanities Guåhan for today's programs and for popping bottles with us today. So, and I'm Monica Flores, I'm the coordinator for marketing and programs at Humanities Guåhan, and today is the last day for our exhibit, 40 Years of Images, Art plus Journalism, Manny Crisostomo. I totally messed up that title. Art plus Journalism, 40 Years of Images, Manny Crisostomo. I think I messed that up again. Anyway, so this is the Manny Crisostomo exhibit. We got a grant from the Pulitzer Prizes for this exhibit and all of the programs. It's the Pulitzer's centennial, and so we're the only territory to receive this grant and to have carried out these programs. We've done several public events, and this is our final event, so thank you all for joining us today. And so first we're going to start by asking each of our panelists an icebreaker question. Okay, I said that right. I've only had one mimosa, I swear. So, if you could do a film project on anyone living today or anyone in history, who would it be and what would your project be like? And why don't we start on that end with Miguel and coming down this way. So, if you could do a film project on anyone living today or anyone living in history, who would it be and what would your project be like?
I think that for me, it would be about Jose Mata Torres. He was a man from Malesa who passed away last year. And so the year and a half before he passed away, I basically met him every week and talked to him and interviewed him, and we published his memoirs through the Micronesia Research Center, which told the story of how a group of men in Malesa rose up and killed the Japanese in their village, liberating themselves and their families. And so after we finished the book, and we would meet every week, and he would basically say, like, what are we supposed to do now? The book is done. And I was like, well, do you want to make a movie about your life? And he's like, oh, let's start doing that. And so we started working on like a screenplay together. And then he did pass away, though, before we finished it. But that is definitely something that I would like to do.
Hi, Howdy. I have several, but I think the first one that comes to my mind is that gentleman that rides the bike that has the cardboard box cover that says "God bless." That guy always, every time I see him, I always want to know his story, and I'm a big believer of the ripple effect and how everybody matters. And so I would probably my story would probably be like, just wanting to know what his day is like. That's all.
That's really cool. I think a lot of us are in bad moods sometime on the road, and then we see him and we're like, okay, it's okay.
Get out the road, man.
Yeah, or get on my way. Okay.
Half a day. Yeah, like Don, there's a lot of stories that I would like to get my hands on, but not enough time to do them all. But if I had to choose one right off the bat, it would probably be an in-depth documentary on Angel Santos. I don't know too much about what he I don't know too much about what he was doing, what his end game was, or what he wanted to do. He seems like, from what I've known throughout the years as an adolescent growing up, and just seeing his name in the headlines and seeing him championed, by the people of Guam, like there's a strong dynamic there, and I haven't had the time to peek in yet. But if I did, it would probably be a story of Angel Santos.
Again, there are so many stories that I think that I would like to tell, but just this morning I was thinking of my grandma who has passed away, and how I read the op-ed in the paper on how Chamorro language is dead. I don't know if you read that. Very offensive, yes. But just to tell the story of someone who I love, who has been through so much, like basically raised her younger siblings and took them through the war, and like it's we hear a lot about heroes, and I would like the term hero to be associated with our own ancestors, like our family members who really did endure so much. And so she's the first person that comes to my mind.
I would like to do a film project on the person who killed, murdered my friend, Victor Nobel. I don't know if you guys remember Victor. But Victor was an aspiring artist of poetry, and he was just a fascinating person. And it was a result of gang violence. I believe it was happened when the moon was full. So every year I see the moon, it's full, and I always think of Victor, and I always call it Victor's moon. And I wanted to actually interview the murderer, who I believe is still on island, to find out, at 16, 17, what prompted them to go and decide to just randomly do, I think it was a gang initiation. So that story always stuck to me, and I think that's very compelling. And that's why I believe films about youth is so important and such an important program, which I'm very glad Cara is very involved with.
Wow, this is a hard question. Donald Trump. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I think there's so many interesting characters, so many interesting people, right? But I was trying to relate something, to here on Guam, and I was thinking about Judge Abadi. Not a lot of people know about him, but that was back like in the 70s. And I heard a lot of interesting stories about him from my dad and stuff, and it was just a crazy time. He was a judge here, and his kid actually got killed, and they believe it was tied to drugs and a bunch of other stuff. And there's so many rumors about that. There's rumors that the guys involved with his son's murder ended up dying in Vegas somewhere, and there's rumors that Judge Abadi had him killed. So I just think it's a whole interesting piece of history from Guam, and kind of looking into that, if that was possible, to see what exactly happened and what it was like here on Guam back then in the 70s, where I believe heroin was really bad back then. So that's one guy.
I agree with everyone here. There's a lot of stories, and way more than I can just point out one in particular. I agree with Kel. I want to do one on Angel Sanchez, but in particularly, I kind of want to focus on the seven men that, six others that also jumped with him. Jumped the fence the first time, got back NAS and made it into Teason again. And also created land trust and everything like that. And that would be very interesting. There's still a couple survivors. So that answers both questions as far as those that passed away and those that are still alive. I guess if I were to focus on one person, man, that would be a lot of fun.
All great ideas, and there's still the footage of them jumping the fence. KOAM actually has that footage. I think it was Guam Cable TV footage originally, and they have it, and so we actually got a copy of it for an exhibit. We were not able to use it, but it'll be really interesting to juxtapose that with sort of contemporary reflections of that time and that moment in Guam history. Very cool. All right, so now I'm going to actually give it right back to Raph. And Bernie, I'm so sorry I forgot to mention, Bernie played such an important role in the Camp Rojas documentary that was done here, and maybe she can talk a little bit more about that, because now we like to spend a little time kind of giving them the opportunity to talk a little bit about their work. So if you could all tell us a little bit about your work and what you've also discovered through your own processes of filmmaking. So we'll start with you, and we'll go down this way.
Okay, well, I started off basically as a painter, illustrator, and a couple friends of mine, opened my eyes to this new medium of filmmaking through Pacific Islanders in Communication and Alex Munoz, pushing me through. He got me focused on this, and since the beginning, from that first paragraph that they asked me to rate, which is, what type of movie would you like to make? And I'm still on the same track, even though I try to go contemporary. I do a lot of, I try to do stuff that's intramural, it's about our history, and try to glamorize on it, because that's the only way that kids are going to pay attention. Just use a crystal ball, Don't laugh at me.
So we were talking about the questions last night. That's why I'm laughing. Raph and I were going over the questions last night, and we were kind of like thinking what our answers were. And he said this great thing having to do with the crystal ball, and I was teasing him that when he gets up here today, the only thing he's gonna remember is like crystal ball. So when he said it, that's why. He remembered it, crystal ball. So anyway, some of the work I've done is with Raph, of course, and we did a couple of documentaries and docudramas, as Raph calls it. I don't know where he came up with that word. He found it somewhere online, but I guess the biggest thing I've discovered through the process of filmmaking is that it's really hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's harder than it looks. It's really, really hard. I mean, I commend everyone up here who's actually has been able to produce films. I consider myself just an amateur. You know, I think a lot of the other people up here at the panel are a lot better than I am at filmmaking, and I think they're the real pros. So I'm just honored to be up here, and I thank everyone for having me up here. And yeah, filmmaking is difficult, and it's not as supported as I would like it to be here on Guam. There's not a lot of support for the filmmaking industry.
I started in filmmaking when I started producing a lot of safer sex spots. Earlier in my career, I worked actually in public health. So anyway, so that kind of like grew into more working with actual filmmakers, and that led me to projects with incarcerated youth, which was really, I think, really one of the things that I felt really strong about and pushing in our community so that it can continue and be maintained over time, which I'm really glad it has. But one of the things that I thought was important was also trying a little experiment in trying to figure out my dad's story, and that led to the Camp Rojas Film Project, and you can view it online. It's camprojas.com, and it's called Under the American Sun. What I learned about the process of filmmaking in that is, in all these projects that I've been, I think I did Parao. Did we do Parao together?
Yes.
Yeah, it was in 30 minutes. I thought that was so powerful. And I think we did that about 10 years ago with Baltazar again and Alex Munoz, and I believe Ralph was on that. And it was a really short project, but to me that was really compelling because we took Chief Parao and we actually made him come alive, and to me that was really great. And just to see how it sparked a certain moment in history was really compelling for me. So I decided, okay, let's talk about, go back and find out who my father was. And so again, that led to the story of the Camp Rojas Film Project. And what I learned actually in the film project, it's very, very hard. Filmmaking is probably one of the hardest mediums in art that that I've experienced. And one is because there was a lot of research. I'm here going into 10 years of research in Camp Rojas Film Project. And people say, well, Fred would say, are you still milking everybody to finish your film? I'm like, no, we still have research. We have research, and he said, when is it going to be done? But as the years come along, we keep getting all these research, and at some point it has to stop. But we were able to get the manifest, we were able to get the passengers manifest to say, look, they really came to Guam. The US military brought them back, so we were finding evidence. I was able to go back to my home in Iloilo, Philippines, or my parents' home, and get more research and try to find people who are still alive, the recruiters, and find, again. But the seed money was, I have to thank the Guam Humanities Council for giving us the seed to do the research. Again, so it's over 10 years in the making. It's not quite done. We want to expand it to a 60-minute film. But again, the research is very critical. And, I could say, okay, let's put it together. It'll be this very fast 30-minute documentary. Bert Sardoma and I could, definitely use what we have right now. But we've come this far, and we want to make sure it's as perfected as possible. Whether or not it's going to be done, it will be done. Whether it's going to be 5 years from now, but we want to take our time. And it's a really important part of the process of filmmaking. It's like you put all these ingredients together, and it's how perfected you want to make it. So for me, that's my understanding of the filmmaking process.
Okay, so a little bit about my work. I guess I'll start with Nihi. And Nihi was born out of probably pure frustration with the military buildup. And most people probably don't know that, but we came off of, I was part of a group called Humanities Guåhan, and we came off of a huge legal battle, and we produced a documentary, a short film, and you win a battle, but you're losing, and it's just depressing and heavy and discouraging. And Nihi was a way to, one, do something that was fun, but also kind of reframe culture for our children and reframe what is important. I mean, one of the issues is that here in Guam we are losing so much. Like right now, the military is going to destroy land that has taken thousands of years to produce these plants that are medicinal, and that's being destroyed, along with so much else. And a lot of us really just don't care. And I think that the reason why we don't care is that there's been a disconnect. We don't understand why that's so important, and we won't realize it until it's gone. And so, so Nihi was really a way to reframe who we are and why we are important, and why what we have to offer the world is valuable. And it is, whoever has said it's difficult, it is very difficult. So, but you know, in the end, if you're driven by something that matters to you, it ends up being worth it. And yeah, that's good.
I agree. A little about your work. I do a lot of stuff. Everything film I do. I teach it, I do it, I watch it. I am the program director for the Guam International Film Festival, which means that I curate the films for the official selections by the time it makes it to the actual showcase. I'm an adjunct instructor at the university. I teach independent filmmaking and mass media. So everything, I mean, nowadays everything's just intertwined, all types of media, social media, print, online, video, audio. It just all now is so infused that filmmaking has become kind of an everyday thing, whether you're on Instagram, Facebook Live, or what have you. It all plays a part in filmmaking. So what have I discovered through my process of filmmaking? Two things. I'll break it down to two things because I could go on forever and talk about it. But one is that you don't need fancy equipment. That's number one. Everybody gets caught up in trying to save up $3,000-$4,000 for the best new camera, when in actuality you could just pick this up and make a, not Don's phone, but your own phone, and make your own movie. That's number one, and it kind of ties into the second thing, which is two, everybody has a story to tell. Each one of you have a story. You have a story that even though you feel a little bit apprehensive to tell, because it's that much personal to you, or it's that personal to you, once you release it or you exhibit it, you would be very surprised as to how much it would relate to somebody else. As personal as you think your story is to you, the audiences or the people that view your story, someone in that audience will relate to you or what you have to say, and they're going to think that you made that movie specifically for them. And so that's what I learned. I learned that, one, don't get too caught up in what type of equipment you use to make it. And number two, don't feel too apprehensive. Don't limit yourself, and don't scare yourself into thinking, oh, people are not going to like my story, or they won't relate to it, or they're going to think it's weird. You're not the only weirdo, you know. We're all weirdos. Someone's going to gravitate and respond to your story. So that's what I've learned.
About my work. Like past works or what I do today. What I do today, I honestly don't know what I do. Because yeah, I do a lot of things that's related to film. Mostly, I do my best to sell the idea of the vision of a film, or the, I guess, the possibilities of what a film can do. So I guess, yeah, I sell the value of the medium of film. That's what I do. I'm the executive director of the Guam International Film Festival and the founder, co-founder along with my brother. My day-to-day really is just putting pieces together. I try to match the mission and the values of our organization, the Guam International Film Festival, or our own personal production brand, and I align those values with corporations that are looking to get local advancement in promotion and association to community do-gooders like ourselves. Let me see, what have I discovered through the process of filmmaking? I would like to agree with Clynt and Cara that it is, to me, the most difficult medium to master, artistic medium to master, because the tools are endless, you know? You have to, you literally, as a director, you have to be able to relate to, you know, people that are operating technical tools to bring your vision to life and to convey the story. I've also discovered, though, on the opposite end of that film is probably the most rewarding as an artist, because if you, by chance, like my brother and I have, I say it's chance, but you know, to hit a mark, to be able to, you know, bottle up your idea in the best way you know how to, and execute something that you've planned all along. You know, that to me is a success, and it's just it's crazy rewarding, and that's what I've learned throughout the process. It's hard, but on the opposite end of that, it's completely worth it. And that's it.
So, the first film that I worked on, let me think here, it took 13 years to make total. And so I started off as a local gopher for a film called War for Guam. Had a Puerto Rican director, Frances Negron Montaner. And she had actually started the film like 4 years earlier and with a completely different focus, and then she came to Guam and she needed a local sort of gopher person to set up the interviews and find things. And so I thought I was just gonna work on it for like 2 weeks, but then it stretched out over several years. And actually it made me not like filmmaking, because it was such a horrific experience. Because she would come on island and I would be her slave for 2 or 3 weeks. That was back in the old days where I was using my grandfather's cell phone and I still had a pager. And I remember once Grandpa's phone bill was like $500 because I had exhausted all the minutes that Guam Cell Communications had. And so, but eventually it finished. And so I kind of liked, though, kind of advising films, assisting films. And so I worked as a scholar for different people, and several films through the Guam Humanities Council. And then actually this interesting thing started where all of these random people started asking me for help with the Chamorro aspects of their films, to sit down and talk to them or translate things for them, help them with accents, even though I have a horrible Chamorro accent. But, and so that really opened up my eyes, though, as to sort of the possibilities for film, because as somebody who is interested in decolonization and Chamorro language revitalization, film offers a great way of trying to do them both. And so that's really my focus now, is kind of decolonizing the mind through a Chamorro language focus. And so last year my friend Ken Cooper, who's getting his PhD right now at UH Manoa, he had a friend from Saipan who was a filmmaker who worked on Hawaii Five-0, Lenny Leon. And so he basically said, hey, my friend Leonard says he'll shoot whatever we want if we buy him a ticket to Guam. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll buy his ticket. And so basically for 1 week, he shot whatever we wanted to. So we did 10 oral history interviews, which were part of Dr. Isa Kelly Bowman's Honga Motna project, and we were very fortunate because 2 of the people who we interviewed died within a year of completing their interviews, and these were oral history interviews in the Chamorro language. And then we also shot the film Pakdali Hineka, which I was very glad was at the GIFF last year. And that was part of sort of where my filmmaking is at now, which is, it was a game which, if you asked a Chamorro person what is the least Chamorro thing that they could think of, they might say the card game Magic the Gathering. Because it's this game where sort of nerds who should probably get more exercise have their cards in little card protectors, and then they move them around and they say, I'm gonna kill your dragon. No, I'm gonna cast a spell on your dragon. And so, but it was something which both me and Ken enjoyed. Me when I was younger, him, because he's still young, he still enjoys it now. But we both basically said, we love the Chamorro language and we like nerdy things. So let's combine those together. And sort of my inspiration for that was the man I mentioned earlier, Jose Mata Torres, because for many years he had a classical music program where he talked in the Chamorro language about classical music. And it was really weird for some Chamorros really liked it, some Chamorros thought it was weird. But I asked him about that many times and he said, you know, en wa campo que corazón mo para este, pues debería un usa fino Chamorro para un escribir. Like, if there's room in your heart for something, you know, then you should use the Chamorro language for it. And he said, you know, I'm a Chamorro, I love the Chamorro language. If I love classical music, I should talk about classical music in Chamorro. And so that's where my filmmaking is kind of at now, just trying to use the Chamorro language in interesting ways which push the boundaries of what we would expect to be Chamorro, what we'd expect the Chamorro language to be used about. And so all the stuff is on Edgar Flores' external hard drive. We have like 4 movies in there, and when Edgar stops doing his paying gigs, if people stop hiring him, then he can finally edit some of those things. But
Well, even the people who hire Edgar are waiting for our terabytes. I'm just kidding. But you bring up a really good point, Miguel. You bring up a really good point about how you're using film to really focus on something that's really important to you, specifically the Chamorro language, right? And so I think that's a perfect segue into our next question. And for those of you who've been sort of flexible through all these different forms of media, Clynt, for instance, you know, kind of seeing where day-to-day journalism might not offer us an opportunity to really engage in important topics such as, you know, language preservation and perpetuation, or political issues, political status issues, militarization, right? How does film help to connect information and art to potentially allow for deeper appreciation or examination of important issues in our community, right? And I mean, and I can even think of Don and Kel's movie Talent Town, that documentary, right? So how does film connect both information and art to potentially allow for deeper appreciation or examination of important issues in our community, and maybe even how does it do so more than day-to-day journalism allows? And we'll start on this end, and then we'll go down again.
If you want, you can use Clynt if you want to pass. It's all organic, don't panic. It's bumper sticker.
Okay, how does film connect information and art to potentially allow for deeper appreciation or examination of important issues in our community? Well, gosh, my work is, it kind of reflects what's going on today. I mean, even though the setting wouldn't be, you know, in ancient times, everything's pretty parallel. We have, to me, we haven't learned anything from the past, apparently. We still have the same issues, it's just we're wearing clothes now, you know, and we have aircon. But let's be real. I mean, we have a militarization issue that even during the Spanish period, they had a militarization issue, right? I mean, granted, we don't have 100 babies dying a day from poisoned water, but at the same time, you know, we still have many issues that from environmental, which was the same then. I don't want to stick on that. There's multiple ways that film brings up issues in the community, not just in, you know, like just doing something from ancient Chamorro times, but like what everyone else is doing. There's so many different angles to tell your story out here, which is great. I'll leave it at that. There's more to say.
So you mentioned with the journalism aspect and news. Yeah, definitely in the news business, stories are shorter and they're quicker, and it's just like, especially now with social media and the internet, it's all about instant gratification, trying to get clicks and likes, shares. So not a lot of thought is put into really getting your audience to have a deeper appreciation or to examine issues on a deeper level. You're just rushing to get stories out there and hurry up, and who got the story first, who broke the news, and also you're confined with the amount of time you have to deliver the story, and you got to cram all this information into a small amount of time, get it out there, and then tomorrow everyone forgot about it. No one cares anymore. No one's even, as soon as the news cycle ends and there's a news story, everyone forgot about that, right? So, I mean, look, what is it, a week ago or two, it was all about the unfortunate situation with the girls who died in the fire. Everyone's talking about it, and then now everyone forgot about it. Now everyone's talking about the unfortunate situation again with the guy who got killed in the fight with his friends, right? Now the buzz is about this guy, Brian Cruz. I know some people who know him. Rest in peace to him. It's a really sad story, but now everyone's talking about that. Everyone forgot about the issues dealing with the fire and why were those people in that situation in the first place. So definitely with film, you have a lot more time to examine those issues and to look deeper at those issues and then relay those issues to your audience. And film's a really good medium, I believe, for connecting your audience to these ideas and these issues, because film's entertaining, video is entertaining. If you talk to anyone in the tech industry, they say video is the #1 thing that's pushing the tech bubble, so to speak. All the cell phone companies are trying to increase the speed, and they say it's all driven by video. Everyone wants to watch videos now. And someone mentioned it earlier, I don't remember, was it Kel or was it Don? Someone was mentioning earlier about sort of everyone is like a filmmaker now with video, right? You can film it on your phone, you Facebook Live, right? And so definitely video is driving a lot of things now. People are interested in video. Everyone wants to see videos online and see stories told with video. And so that's why film, I think, is a great way to get your audience to look at these things, because people want to watch it. People don't want to read. No one reads anymore. People don't want to read a book anymore. They want to watch a film on it, unfortunately. But there's just so many things you can do with film.
And I agree with everyone that has already responded. I think the great thing about Camp Rojas Film Project, it really connected not only the filmmaking process, but academic scholars and also historians, high school students, just people in general, your common people. When you walk out the streets and you talk about Camp Rojas Film Project, and you talk about Camp Rojas, the history of Camp Rojas, that to me is already a connection. And people are talking about it, and it's not just something buried in history. I have a couple of academic scholars who came and approached me to talk about Camp Rojas, and they actually graduated and with a PhD. So I'm really proud about that, because this young man who came here wanted to know more about the military buildup of Guam, and he was focusing not just on Camp Rojas. I said, look, there were other camps that came out of the post-war buildup of Guam. So he started to research that, and he finally got his PhD. I had two high school students who interviewed me, I think this past year, and a couple of students for Guam History Month that got to showcase Camp Rojas Film Project. So in the end, it's not just about me and my family and the people that I was surrounded growing up. It's about people who had a profound impact or connection to the story. So to me, it's the people living today, the generations today that are carrying on the story, whether or not the film is finished or not, it doesn't matter. It's documented in the books, in the history books, in the academic books, in photos that I've acquired from abroad, from families. So for me, that was really opened up a consciousness. And I think film does that. It opens up a consciousness that's just not, one way, it's just not one level, it's several levels. And I think that brings to me closure, really, in understanding my parents' history and making sure that the generations, again, do not forget.
So kind of echoing what everyone has said, I'm going to use an example of a recent news piece that came out. I saw an article on, I believe it was KUAM where you have these smiling Surahanas who are collecting herbs on base, right? And it's almost like a happy, joyful, look what the military did. They invited in the Surahana. And I think what film allows us to do, especially as Indigenous folks, is to take a closer look at that story. And our storytelling it's pretty much cultural. And filmmaking is a way to transfer that storytelling into a modern medium and say, no, that's really not what's going on. You know, that land they shouldn't be there in the first place, and you probably shouldn't be destroying shit. Yeah, excuse me. But, you know, filmmaking allows for us to reframe the story. I like that word because I think it's really important that the general media doesn't decide what is going on and doesn't tell us what's going on, because it's really our story. And filmmaking is a way for us to get involved in our story and to kind of take back our story and do it through a way that sort of sometimes is, I guess, helps us to feel empowered and helps us to heal and involves folks who might otherwise feel marginalized. So film is important in that way. I don't know if that answered the question, but I'll pass it on.
Okay, so how does film connect information and art to potentially allow for deeper appreciation or examination of important issues in our community? How does film do that? Simply put, there's no magic or mythical mystery behind it. It's manipulation at its best. Manipulation of audio, manipulation of visuals, manipulation of timing. That's why filmmaking is such hard work, because the director, if he cares enough, is trying to make you, the audience, feel what he feels or what he sees in his mind. So what does he do? He gets the best DP, or director of photography, the best cinematographer. He gets the best editor to control the manipulation of time, so he can control when you laugh, when you tear, when you're happy, when you're sad. Film is probably the only medium that can encompass audio, visual, marketing, sales, if you want to take it, for face value, and cram it all together and create not just a product, but a product, like the guys were saying, that's entertaining. So the audience, whether they like it or not, if you do your job well as a filmmaker, they're gonna learn. They might not be thinking they're learning it at the immediate time they're watching your film, but if it's done well enough, if you have the right people in the right places, you as a filmmaker can manipulate it to where they feel entertained but walk away educated, and it won't hit them until maybe they leave the theater. So film is able to encompass all of that and manipulate it perfectly.
And yeah, rhythm, it's about evoking emotional response, rhythm. So yeah, the marriage of the visual and the audio together, it's the only medium of communication that is as, I guess, robust, right? Because it has all the elements. For me, when I get into like director mode, I want to try to have you smell what's on the screen, and it takes that type of detail to really maximize the medium. So yeah, it connects in that way, because you're able to take an idea and then transfer that idea and implant that into somebody else. That's all I gotta say.
So, as I guess how long have I been a quote-unquote activist? For 14, 15 years now. And so I can tell you that, given my experience, speaking directly to somebody about something is often the least effective way of convincing them or enlightening them or educating them about it. If you tell somebody the Chamorro language is important, they'll say, yeah. And even if they superficially agree with you, they don't really believe it, because instinctively humans tend to resist something if it's affecting the interiority of themselves, but it feels like it's imposed by somebody else's superiority over them. You're saying you know more than me? Well, then I'm not gonna do what you're saying, even if I agree with even if so much of me agrees with what you're saying. And so, for all sorts of major issues, if you approach somebody directly, oftentimes they will just resist it, because as every individual, that's what you can do, is that you can resist enlightenment. You can resist intelligence, you can resist that. And so film is like a really great way of allowing people the experience that education, that enlightenment belongs to them, and it's part of their personal journey and personal experience of the narrative. And so that's one of the most important things about it, is that if a film is effective, you change your mind, or you educate, you become more enlightened about something, and you accept it that you were part of the process, so it's okay. It doesn't feel like the filmmaker imposed something on me. It doesn't feel like society is imposing something on me. And so that's one of the ways, for example, like all of the lectures that I can give to students about how they should speak Chamorro, it has far less effect than making them watch episodes of Siha, made by Miracle and Rizal and so on, because then they can find their own path to that same message. And so that's what I really like about film.
All right, great. And just building off of the same idea, right? And really kind of picking up, I really want to highlight what Bernie and Cara were talking about. Bernie sort of talking about the power of film to connect audiences and therefore different voices, right? Whether it's scholarly voices, youth voices, elders, voices of our elders, and also Cara's sort of this idea of transferring knowledge and the decentralizing or re-centralizing of authority and knowledge through filmmaking. How does film provide greater access to lost narratives, counter narratives, and other important stories, and what are some of those stories that maybe you've been able to expose or address in your own work? So again, how does film provide greater access to important stories and lost narratives or counter narratives, and what are some of those narratives and stories? Who would like to go first? I won't just, okay.
Well, sitting on a committee at GCC to do a series of Chamorro language videos that were later published on YouTube, we talked a lot about that, and one of the things that came to light was, you know, from the conquest of Spain, and this is just from the research that I've been involved with. Just recently, or not, like a couple decades ago, they released all the documents, but it's still in old Spanish. And to translate all of that, it takes time and sometimes money and resources. But with what they have, about 5% is translated into English, and then of that, we have what we know about Guam and the Northern Marianas. And that is still hidden in a book that is at the mark. And you know, it's yet to be fully published and spread out like that. So in illustrating, or actually not just illustrating, but in depicting parts of history, it opens up, you know, everybody to think about that and want to go and see what else is there, because this was really interesting. You know, these are basically legal documents that were translated, you know. On top of that, let's see. Some stories, like I said, you know, history repeats itself because we're not learning anything. We haven't read them. You know, we haven't learned from our past. Yes, we learn things every day, but there are things that just we didn't, you know, we overlook, you know. And those things, for instance, Carlos Madrid pointed something out. He's a translator, and everyone dumped all the ancient documents on him, and he's like, I can't translate any of this. This is all in Chamorro. I'm like, what? And we had to go look at it and review what's going on. now we realize there's archaic Chamorro, you know, it's all written down. So these are things that gets brought to the surface. And every time that comes up, you know, there's a new page, a new chapter to read, you know, or to view. It depends on us to translate that into film.
And I think just building on Raph is talking about, he's talking about some of those lost stories and lost narratives that are written in Spanish documents. And he and I did a couple of docudramas on that, which he didn't mention, but it's Sanglo is one of them, and another one is Hurrah. And those are both lost stories. Not a lot of people know about the chief Sanglo, who was the Chamorro chief during the Spanish-Chamorro War, and there's a whole bunch of them, and there's a whole bunch of these stories that people don't know about. So with film, you're able to tell those stories and sort of recapture something that's been lost to time and tell those stories. Sanglo is an example, and then also the assassination of Hurrah. A lot of people don't know the full story about Hurrah. They don't really know what he did. Some people know he was a chief. They know that there's his speeches there, you know, his speeches at the court where I work now. he has his whole speeches there at the court. And a lot of people just really don't know a lot about him, but through filmmaking, you can educate people and show them more about him. And as Raph was saying, through that process, at the same time, people get interested and now they want to know more. I mean, I know there's a lot of times I've watched a movie about something or a documentary about something, and not just through watching it was I educated, but after I watched it, I would want to learn more about that topic. Then I would go research on my own and find out everything I want, you know, everything I can possibly get my hands on about that certain topic that I saw in a movie or in a film. So I think not only through the film, but it continues to encourage people to learn more even after they watch the film.
Again, actually 20 years ago, I worked on a film with Christine Choi. She was an Oscar-nominated filmmaker, and we produced a documentary called All in Silence, Not a Simple Story, about a Asian Pacific Islander coming to Guam to disclose his HIV status to his family in Guam. To me, that was like probably one of the best films that was used for education purposes, because you can watch, when film, you can keep on watching it over and over again. So when we would go out and educate the community about HIV, this is in the 90s when, you know, people were still fearful about HIV/AIDS. We were able to say, look, Pacific Islanders get HIV as well, and AIDS, and to ensure that our community doesn't, you know, be afraid to talk about it. So I think that was really very important in my experience in filmmaking, is to have that, because in film, it's forever. Film, you can see it over and over again. You can go back, and I think I watched this film when I would go out and educate the community. I think I watched it like 50 times, and I'm like, okay, am I not tired of this? But basically, my message is, in film, you can capture that one moment forever. And it's a moment you can always go and reflect back on. So I think it did justice to HIV/AIDS, because I think Guam was able to, you know, pull somebody who is Chamorro and say, look, this is somebody who, you know, I'm living with HIV and I'm Chamorro. And I used to have these Chamorro activists call me and say, hey, what's that faggot doing, you know, in Guam, you know, what's he talking about with HIV, you know? It was really terrible, but it was like one of those where you had to take a stand. You got to continue with the work, and they were like, no, we don't want these Chamorros saying that they can get HIV and AIDS. And, you know, no, we're going to make this documentary. Nobody's going to stop us, and we're going to finish it, and we did. And I just want to say, if you ever get it, it's a PBS. It's on PBS, and I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but it hopefully, you know, it has been used nationally to educate Pacific Islanders about HIV and AIDS, and that Chamorros do get HIV and AIDS.
So I'm going to answer the second part of this question, just related to some of the things that I've been involved in. One of the stories that, or several of the stories that have stood out for me in my filmmaking. One, of course, would be Poggett. That was one of the first documentary that I participated in, and I think that was an important story because it kind of represented everything that we were afraid of losing, and so it was really important that that story be told. The other story that really sticks out for me is during Mihi, we had an episode on the native birds, and kind of the narrative around the bird loss here in Guam is the brown tree snake, right? That's like the brown tree snake caused the loss of the birds. And what we found out when we were doing research were two things. One is that kind of across the board, the Manapku that we talked to all remembered, or I shouldn't say all, but a lot of them remembered when the military sprayed, I think it was the jungles to try to combat mosquitoes. And they remembered birds' eggs being soft after that happened, and just seeing birds dead on the jungle floor, that's not the brown tree snake. And so that was a really important narrative from that perspective, but also because many of the Manapku would get really emotional talking about the birds. And one man even was brought to tears. And so that kind of inspired for us in an Ihi episode, which we're going to be re-releasing soon, a music video that we did about the loss of the birds and kind of that feeling of nostalgia and mourning that our Manapku have over something that they remember so vividly, walking through the jungle and being with, these sounds that for us are almost, they're coming back, but it's almost a foreign idea. We're so captured by this idea of a jungle full of birds when that's what our elders grew up with. So the third thing I was going to mention is one story that I'd really like to pursue, and I think it's a very important narrative for our culture, is Raph mentioned the chiefs. And I think something that continuously just jumps out at me every time I hear about the chiefs is that women were just as important in ancient Chamorro society as men were. It's just that the folks who observed our culture and wrote things down didn't deem them as important, and so their names weren't written down. And something that I'd like to do is to try to recover some of that and bring that narrative to the front, because for our girls, it's really important to realize that that women in our society are just as important as the men, and that we all hold value.
Okay, how does film provide greater access to important stories and lost narratives? Just like what Bernie was saying, what Clynt was saying too, is that they act as a timestamp. They're a point of reference, whether it's a scholastic reference or a fanatic reference. If you're into that particular subject, you're going to research as much material as possible. And the people that usually make the films well have already done a lot of research for you. So whether it's fictional or nonfiction, films that are topical or that are niche have a lot of research already embedded within them. And so you would just have to basically do your own research and then, connect the dots. So that's one. They're time-stamped and they can serve as references, number one. Number two is audiences. Perfect example, YouTube, right? Or the Guam International Film Festival. For my job as the program director, I would watch every single submission that comes in through GIFF. And so I'm literally watching hundreds of movies a year, whether they're features or short films. And I'll give you guys an insider secret to film festivals and program directors. They look for movies that are strong and topical. It doesn't matter if it's old news, whether it's an oil spill, or if it has to deal with, I don't know, you name it, something with Trump nowadays. But whether it's political, environmental, based on human rights or social issues, if you do a film well enough and it's topical, whether it's a documentary or fiction, you can open that and your cause and your story to an entirely new audience on the other side of the world. So with film festivals, one thing I really love about film festivals is that they're very organic. They call for a bunch of people to come sit in a room in the dark and shush and watch. Nowadays, it's very difficult to do. I mean, now more than ever, right, with our cell phones. So just for people to be willing to sit down and give that story, they haven't even seen the movie yet, but they're already willing to receive the information presented. I mean, that's powerful. So if you do your film well enough, and you send it along the film festival circuit, or even not, just throw it up on YouTube, and it'll find its audience. And that's how, for example, let's take a quick detour. Met Good here, Miss Diane Strong, when she did her crowdfunded book, I mean, it was just people from all over the world found a common passion, which was diving, which was Chuk, and they all rallied around this project, and she met her goal and was able to materialize the book. So it is all about finding your audience, and film is just that. And there's so many different avenues now. I mean, you have Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, whatever, you name it. You just have to do it well and make sure you connect with your audience.
Thank you, Dan. Sorry, both of you. Thank you, everybody who supported this.
Absolutely. How does film provide greater access to important stories and lost narratives? I'll give you a great example. The Guam International Film Festival was commissioned by, or I guess funded by the Department of Youth Affairs to create a underage alcohol prevention awareness, like a PSA, but in the form of something creative that we can come up with. And although that created it, the idea of having a film tell this story created access, in a sense, that those that were advocating for the prevention of alcohol consumption for youths gave us all the access, and I'm not too sure if we're talking about the access in terms of the viewers' access to the story, or just access, in terms of I guess the what's the word I'm looking for? Help me. Anyways, in that sense, it created a greater access to the important story of these banner advertisements that are all over Guam. So here we have this story that wants to be told by the Department of Youth Affairs about advertising in the villages and advertising in schools with alcohol banner advertisements. Now, they're allowing us, this important story and narrative to share. But on the opposite end of that, there are also some how can I say? Yeah. In order for us to tell our story, whether it be our cultural story, our identity, reshaping or reframing our identity, we all have to come to, I guess, a unified type of vision. I have this theory that Guam, as like a vacation destination, is probably one of the most difficult places to promote and advertise. I really enjoy promoting and advertising. It's my thing. But because it's diverse, because Guam is so diverse, it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly who it is that we are, because we kind of all share the same culture and the same practices and traditions, but at the same time we have this, Western influence, and then we have, Asian technology, and then we have this whole goulash of things. And so in order for us to have access or tell that story, we need to be able to identify that one thing. And what makes it difficult is what makes it difficult to, how can I say? I'm going everywhere, man. It's like crazy. But the lost narratives are a lot of times the conflicting ones, because we're such a small community, and it's to wrap it back around to our project with DYA. We wanted to tell a story that educated the youth about the dangers of alcohol consumption. And then on the opposite end of that, you have the distributors and the businessmen that feel threatened by us telling that story. So it's a hard question for me to answer in just one way. Sorry, I hope you guys gathered to grab something from that ramble. Thank you.
Let me think. Okay, so in answering this question, there's two quotes that I use when I teach history at UOG, I think that I use. One is from Rolf Michel Trio, a historian, and he says that history is a bundle of silences. And so, if we look at a place such as Guam, for example, as others have mentioned, the silences in history are there not necessarily because of freak accidents or sort of the vagaries of chance or whatever, but it's really because they fundamentally disempower some and they empower others. So the lack of female leaders' names in ancient Chamorro history sort of it fundamentally empowers some, gives authority to some, and disempowers others. And so really film is important because of the second quote that I'll tell you, which is from a novelist, A.J. Bayat, who says that novels make up, or novels are found at the shortcomings of history, which is that at the point where there is this horrific silence, where you know that something was there, but then historians tell you, well, you can't really prove anything or say anything. Well, that's where creativity has to come into play. Because that's where the filmmakers and the artists, the novelists, the poets have to try to give voice to fight against that silence, because missionaries or naval governors or senators or presidents, whoever they were, they deemed that sort of your history would be a great bundle of silences. And so it is your job then, and your community's job, to fill it with noise. Fill it with noise which basically empowers you to keep speaking and keep talking, to keep singing, to keep dancing, to keep creating. And so, so on that question, I think those two quotes are helpful.
Thank you so much. And so just, kind of thinking about the difficult narratives, such as maybe somebody living with HIV, or the marginalized voices such as our uncle, or even Don, what you were saying, sort of these dominant discourses or dominant voices which sort of impose on the way we tell stories. Like, I got what you were talking about, right? Like, so when businesses help shape how we present things in public, and then of course wrapping with them again about this sort of creative force that's beyond all of that, and that really underscores the value of our local filmmaking community and our local filmmaking industry. And before we kind of jump into the next question about where our local film community and industry fit in larger regional, Micronesian, or larger Pacific, or even national contexts, and what we can do to engage residents, or how film can help to engage residents in deeper levels of art and news literacy, I thought we could take a break from those questions and open it up to the audience if they wanted to ask questions, or maybe if you guys even want to ask questions to each other or talk amongst yourselves. So would anybody in the audience like to pose a question to our panel? Anybody? Okay.
Since I'm going to Cuba next week, and of course Cuba has a different style of government, just fantasize if I could put all of you on the airplane
Go.
What would you say? What would you do?
I'll grab the camera.
Well, I know you're gonna have a good camera with you.
We'd get nothing done, we just party.
Oh, he does have cigars.
Anybody want to talk about that? Well, that's really interesting because Cuba's been shut off to the rest of the world for a really, really long time, and now it's this exotic destination hotspot, and I think that's can be very
And they have a
problematic,
very
right?
film
I think it's could be very problematic, and I think I'd be really interested to know how the filmmakers want to address that sort of ideas.
I think I would use it as a vacation because that's what we need. A lot of times we need a place to refresh. But just on another note, like to lead out on a more somber note, I've known to take the conversation from fun to like somber in 5 seconds. It's a skill. But I would be really careful because as an Indigenous filmmaker, I really believe that the storytelling of a place should be done by the people of that place. And so if there was anything that I could do to work in solidarity with folks who are doing stuff there, or to somehow support something that they have going on, that I would probably do that. But I would be really careful about telling the story of somewhere that I am not very familiar with, and just because I really strongly believe that Indigenous folks should be empowered to tell their own stories and should be the storytellers of their culture and their experience and their home. So there's my.
I say be careful to the people that are viewing it. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's one thing. I think everybody has the right to tell a story, but I feel that just be a mindful viewer. That's all. I understand what you're saying, Cara. I do. You know what? The topic kind of just kind of helps segue into the local filmmaking community thing. I figured it's really the only question I know the real answer to, I think. But yeah, I want to say thanks to everybody here giving us their time, and what an honor it is to be sitting down with a whole bunch of smart and active people in our community. I am blessed. #blessed. What are some of the thoughts about local filmmaking community and or industry, and where do we see Guam within the regional Micronesian or larger Pacific or even a national context? Well, we're in our infancy, I believe, in terms of filmmaking community and industry. But, filmmaking is very accessible. We can, as soon as we make up our mind to make a film, we can literally begin production tomorrow. So it just really depends on how our community of storytellers value the medium. I feel that right now is a very, very important time in regards to filmmaking, the medium itself, and really utilizing that, because there's so many things that we could utilize. Like I always refer back to Maget. What was the American soil, Jamal Soul? So he mentioned, that there's an opportunity for us to be able to, create our past traditions, recreate them, because there's been that disconnect in that timeline where we have no history in place for us to follow those traditions. So with that, and with that understanding and that need, and the advancement of technology and the accessibility of technology, and also just the fact that filmmaking as an industry is probably the last economic opportunity that Guam has to create for itself. I think that we really need to look at those things as opportunities for us to utilize film. I see us in the next, I'm hoping in the next 5 to 10 years, making our first legitimate, film that we can all agree on and promote as, a region, an island region. I think in a more larger context within the world, I feel that we have the most to say because we have probably the most unheard of stories, the most ridiculous stories, and the most authentic and the most unique stories. And the trend goes as film production houses have created the film over 20, 30, 40 times, they're always looking for new films, and new scripts and new stories. And sooner or later, they're gonna look towards the little rock in the Pacific. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, that was really great, and he's right, in 5 years we have to prepare our filmmakers and our industry, but before we can do that, we have to start thinking, and I know there's been some talk about a film commission. A film commission is very critical because when you're going to look at collaboration with international filmmakers, we must make sure there's regulations to ensure that they come in here and that our indigenous trees, plants, animals, people are protected. And we want to make sure the collaboration is regulated so that we have to look at this as an industry where we are looking at financial as well. So when you have Japan or Korea and all those very sophisticated, well, we are sophisticated just as they are, come in here, we want to make sure we're compensated as well. And a commission will have the regulations to do that, making sure local filmmakers are working in partnership, not just in partnership, but being paid and given the proper compensation, and not exploiting our filmmakers here in Guam. So again, I know that this is all going to be something that in 5 to 10 years, if we want to make sure that there is an industry that's viable, financially viable, we have to push a film commission.
Is there anything started as far as a film commission? Is someone getting the ball rolling? Is anyone stepping up to the plate and saying,
Well, again, I don't know. I remember I looked up, I think this was even 10, 15 years ago, and I had somebody look up the California regulations, and I don't know what ever happened. I think I gave it to somebody, and I'm like, here, take it. I don't know. I'm in public health. I know about government, but my role is in public health. And I remember we were talking about about 10 years ago, and I'm not sure what happened, and I don't know why. I don't want to say what happened or if there was any attempt, but this is the time. And as the Muña brothers are saying, Guam has its own sophisticated filmmakers, but we're going to lose out financially, and we're never going to build a viable if we don't push our regulations. And this should be done. And anyone here? I don't know.
Anyone on the panel have any? Yeah, I have any.
Actually, yeah, I can probably fill in all the gaps.
Okay.
So, from my understanding, Alex Muñoz had introduced the idea of a Guam Film Office about a decade ago, and I'm not too sure what legislative representative he was working with at the time. But what happened was it was reintroduced with the efforts of me and Kel, and well, we didn't spearhead it, that's for sure. But the Guam Film Office was introduced to Tina Muña Barnes' office and was voted into law. So right now, as it stands, the Guam Film Office is a government entity under the operation and management of the Guam Economic Development Authority, to which I sat on the original, me and Kel sat on the original advisory board when the film office was created. So right now, we are currently working, and when I say we, it's the Guam Economic Development Authority in I guess, association with the Guam International Film Festival. So we are looking towards creating rules and regulations to not only benefit local filmmakers or to exempt local filmmakers entirely, but to, create all the requirements and restrictions and benefits for filmmakers internationally. And a lot of that too is, yes, we are making sure that our local filmmakers and workers are properly represented and compensated.
So I definitely agree that film is such a potential industry for Guam. But I think before the industry, it's really important, as Bernie was saying, that we think about protecting our resources, our culture. I can think of several films that have focused, not made by Chamorro filmmakers, that have focused on the Chamorro people, and I don't know how much has actually returned to our community from the making of that film. And I think that that sometimes we're a little too willing to give ourselves away for money or even just for exposure. And I understand sometimes the reasons why we do that, but I think if we're really going to empower our community, and as a region, like Guam has been exposed to very much the Western side of filmmaking. And I think that there's so much beyond just the financial value of filmmaking, especially in our community where we have so many social ills that we need to address. And filmmaking is able to address those in so many ways. Filmmaking is an avenue for storytelling, it's a way to preserve our culture and our language, it's a way to empower young people, it's a way to highlight marginalized voices. And I would really hope that in going forward, that our first priority really is in protecting our resources, in protecting our culture, and then in also using filmmaking to heal our community and to empower our community. And then industry would be second. So to all of that. Yeah, those are my comments.
Excellent. And Raph was actually the chair for the film delegation for the Festival of the Pacific Arts, and he was connected with a lot of other Pacific Islander filmmakers as well, so he's got some comments. And then maybe Miguel, I don't know if you want to say anything about sort of indigenous research or indigenous-centered research even in filmmaking, and if you wanted to comment on that, if you want to. I was just thinking you might want to do that. But anyway, go ahead, please, Raph, please share a comment.
Hello. Okay. Thoughts on local filmmaking. I hope you laugh because it would strengthen the idea. Guam is a sleeping giant of filmmaking. And there's so much talent out here, and they don't know it yet. And I mean, a lot of them, they kind of skim through it, but life gets in the way. But I do agree, we do need a commission. We need to establish these laws right away, but in the meantime, this is the Wild West of filmmaking. Things get done, there are downfalls in it, like making sure people get compensated. That's why you need those laws, okay? Also, getting companies to actually invest in your film. You need people to, to regulate that, And the other thing is we shouldn't just look towards Hollywood. I mean, there are offsprings around the world. There's filmmakers throughout the Pacific. FestPac opened up a great window actually. 26 islands came out here, and they all do a little bit of film. I especially love the French films because they didn't put any subtitles. I appreciated that because I remind myself that imagine, yeah, you may not like, but I like it's like watching a foreign flick. But at the same time, their talents, their resources are something that we can think of regionally. I mean, we had a scoping meeting during FestPac, and we invited at least 2 representatives, if not every filmmaker from that was at that Festival of Pacific Arts. And we had a great turnout. Everyone was communicating. They shared what resources they have. A great idea was, you can get your equipment, top of the line equipment in Australia get educated in it in Fiji, you know, and you know, get funding possibly from Niue, you know, because they get funding for island projects. Okay, not everything. I mean, a lot of yes, there are a lot of grants out there coming out from America, but we're so far out here. There's grants out. Maybe they don't call them grants, but there's funding that come out that can come this way, partnerships. Okay, another thing to think about is how would we fit into that international realm of filmmaking? Okay, we just like telecommunications could have been. We could be the hub of filmmaking in the Pacific, okay? And think about it that way. I mean, people can fly out here and get an awesome education and get trained with crews, you know, that work with other islands. Every single island has a different way of dealing with film, you know, and a lot of them are a lot more, they're more refined, yes, some of them are more passionate, you know, but they're all great, and it's something that we haven't even scraped the surface of, you know. In the meantime, I really can't wait to work with everybody, because everybody's gonna eventually step into to the arena of filmmaking, whether it's best boy to cameraman to writer, whatever. But everyone, it's gonna be great to work with everybody.
Okay, well, we have actually 7 minutes left in the panel. So, sorry, Bernie has a comment.
I just want to make sure that, you know, I'm going back to why it should be regulated, because when you have permits, you have to make sure if somebody violates, and we have to protect our assets, like even if it's like a laddie stone or, you know, taking a turtle out of the beach. If we need to make sure those fines are in place, because you have a lot of these filmmakers coming from off island. This weekend, let's say, do any of you guys know who's shooting out there?
Right.
None of us know.
Right.
Oh, I'm gonna take the sea turtle because now I'm gonna make a film about the sea turtle. So those are some of the things I bring up, because I think when I talk about protecting our assets, we must make sure that our resources in Guam are not exploited as well.
Sure, thank you. And so for each of the panelists, you know, since we're running out of time, we only have 7 minutes left, maybe if you want to share any of your closing thoughts or ideas, or even if you even want to end with this question. So we've really identified all the ways that filmmaking helps to engage residents on important issues. So maybe if you wanted to close on any of your own thoughts or ideas, or if you wanted to think about, you know, what we could do to immerse and engage residents in a dynamic level of arts and news literacy on Guam. So what could we do to engage residents in a more dynamic level of arts and news literacy on Guam? That or any of your own closing thoughts?
I'd like to say a few things. More along the lines of my closing thoughts, and I can touch on that a little bit too. But real briefly, I did want to talk about what my thoughts are about the local filmmaking community and industry. And really, I think we all owe a lot to the Muña brothers. I think we should all give them a hand right now, seriously. Because they really lit a spark in they're spearheading the local filmmaking community. I mean, with the Shiro's Head, by the way, I watched it again a few weeks ago, and that thing really, exactly, it stands the test of time. I watched it again and I was like, this is a freaking really good movie, you know? And I really I think you guys lit a spark under a lot of people, and I think what you guys are doing good with the Guam International Film Festival, right there. Then we're talking about how we fit in with the international community. You guys are doing a lot to bring international filmmakers here to Guam and expose locals to that scene and get more locals involved in filmmaking. So I think what you guys have done is a lot for Guam, and I think if we continue in that direction, I really appreciate everything you guys have done for the filmmaking industry on Guam. And then as far as what needs to be done to immerse and engage residents, and I guess a better understanding of the arts and news on Guam, I think we're all doing it now. We're kind of in our own ways, we're doing a lot of that. Through everything that we're doing, filmmaking, we're exposing people and immersing and engaging residents in that. Things like the Guam International Film Festival is engaging residents in film and in the arts of film. And the more that we expose the community to these things, the more we educate and the more they get immersed in it and want to understand it better. So that's it.
You said all I wanted.
Yeah.
Anybody
Guam
else?
International Film Festival, November 16th.
Actually, I was going to ask you to
Oh, yeah. please do come to the Guam International Film Festival, November 16th through the 20th. The 16th's on a Wednesday, so Chamorro Village will be popping. We're gonna have opening ceremonies, hopefully with some champagne and wine and water for everyone. Then we'll have our opening film, Malay Murals, and will be 5 days of cool fun. Yep, yeah, check the website, guamfilmfestival.org. And that's about it. I want to say thank you to everybody.